Welcome back. All right, so we have two Western Canadian teams that are in very similar positions right now. And it's interesting because they only finished 2 points apart in the regular season, so I figured why not compare the two and what we're looking at with Winnipeg and with Calgary. Now, I decided to wear Calgary Wranglers because it's a Calgary jersey, but it's got a W on the front, so Winnipeg. It's as close as I could get. Anyways, one thing that stands out right away is with cap space, there's a huge difference. Winnipeg has a lot more leeway, it would seem on the surface, in that they have almost $13 million in cap space, whereas Calgary has $1.25 million. But it's a bit deceptive because Dubois is a restricted free agent. You would think he's going to command at least $6 million a year, so that immediately eats into that. But of course, the fact that he reportedly doesn't want to stay in Winnipeg means that he'll have to sign that contract somewhere else. Now, when we look at the top contracts on each team, there's a difference as well. So with Calgary, they've got some of their core guys signed for a while, starting with Huberdeau, $10.5 million contract until 2031. And this is a contract that we're going to talk about a lot because if Huberdeau's production doesn't improve this year, that contract is going to be a major weight around the necks of anybody trying to make a decision in the Calgary Flames organization. Even with a salary cap going up, $10.5 million is a lot. Kadri, $7 million until 2029. So that's $17.5 million a year cap space towards Kadri and Huberdeau. It is in their best interest to try to make sure those players have a bounce back year. Mangiapane is under a contract of $5.8 million until 2025. And then on the blue line, you've got Uyghur, $6.25 million till 2031. You've also got Hanifin, $4.95 million. He's due next year. And of course, word has it, he wants to be moved. Doesn't want to stick around in Calgary beyond this coming season. And then in net, you have Markstrom, who's got a $6 million cap hit until 2026. So that's your three forwards, two defensemen, and a goaltender in terms of the biggest money makers. On the Winnipeg side of things, it's a much lower number to start. It's Blake Wheeler, $8.25 million until next year. And there's word of whether or not they might buy out Wheeler's final year of his contract, which would allow them to spend a little bit more money this coming season. Connor, $7.14 million is his cap hit till 2026. Kyle Connor, an excellent forward. I think he's capable of more than he showed this past season with Winnipeg, so I'm betting on a bounce back from him. Mark Scheifele's an interesting one. He's due next year, too. $6.12 million cap hit. So again, is there more cap space on the Winnipeg side? Yes. But are there more contracts that are due? Also, yes. On the blue line, you have Josh Morrissey, $6.25 million till 2028. That's an excellent deal for Morrissey. The fact that Uyghur and Morrissey have the same cap hit's kind of mind-blowing to me. Schmidt, $5.95 million till 2025. And in net, Connor Hellebuck, $6.16 million until next year. So this is the big difference. You got Wheeler's due, Scheifele's due, Hellebuck's due next year. Out of the top six, and again, three forwards, two defensemen, a goaltender, three forwards, two defensemen, a goaltender. Only one due next year for Calgary, and that's Noah Hanifin, who may be gone out of the Calgary Flames organization before the season gets started. Well, these are both teams that don't have a ton of draft capital. So for Calgary, they have a first-round pick. That's number 16 overall. For Winnipeg, they have a first-round pick. That's number 18 overall. Calgary has a second-round pick. They do not have a third. Winnipeg doesn't have a second-round pick. They have a third. Winnipeg has 2 fifths and a seventh. For Calgary, they have a fourth, a sixth, and a seventh. So those are not draft picks that are going to acquire you a lot of wiggle room under the cap if you're Calgary. Now, the overall records of these teams, again, similar. 93 points for Calgary. They went 38, 27, and 11. Their inability to win in overtime did bite them in the end. Winnipeg, 46, 33, and 3 for 95 points. Only 2 points clear of Calgary. But when you look at the overall numbers, Calgary was a plus 11 in goals, 258 scored, 247 allowed. Winnipeg was a plus 22, 246 goals scored to 224 allowed. That being said, I don't really think there's a big difference between the Flames and the Jets at this point. And I do think that both of them should be in the running for a wild card spot, but that's where things get interesting. So you've got a new GM and you have a new coach in Calgary. Clearly things weren't working, and after they missed the playoffs, there was a lot of reports that there were players who said we won't play under Daryl Sutter anymore. We're done with it. And so they made the change. Now on the other side, the Jets, same GM, same coach. Basically the opinion seems to be, hey, If players want to go, they can go. We've got to fix this locker room. Now, in Calgary, I haven't heard the same thing about the locker room. That being said, when you have a coach that's as one that causes the kind of emotional reaction that Daryl Sutter seems to with his players, and when it's going well, it's great. But when it's not going well, it can be kind of toxic. It feels like it's a different situation, but similar between these two teams. So when you look at players who are reportedly on the block, and I've got a question mark on both sides, Tyler Toffoli, 82 games, 34 goals, 39 assists, 73 points. Had the best year of his career. I don't expect him to do it again. But at the very least, with those point totals, goal totals, and his cap hit, he might be attractive for a team in a trade. Remember, this year's free agent market, not fantastic, so it might help a team like Calgary that's looking to move a player. Lindholm, 80 games, 22 goals, 42 assists, 64 points. They'd like to keep Lindholm, but the word has it that Lindholm may not want to be back. That he, at the very least, won't be discussing an extension right away. And Backlund, 82 games, 19 goals, 37 assists, 56 points. Similar reporting with him as well. Now, it's possible Craig Conroy can mend some of these fences, and I think he'd like to. Hannafin as well, wanting out, 81 games, 7 goals, 31 assists, 38 points. And we'll see if Craig Conroy can talk any of them into sticking around. On the Winnipeg side, again, on the block, Scheifele may very well be on the block. 81 games, 42 goals, 26 assists, 68 points. The 41 goals is impressive, but he dropped off of his normal points production. He has been absolutely, you can set your watch by him. He will score a point per game. Did not this season. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 73 games, 27 goals, 36 assists, 63 points. Again, he's a restricted free agent, and we'll see if he ends up in Montreal or somewhere else. Again, I would expect a lot of talk about Montreal because that's where he reportedly wanted to go last year. That's where his agent has said, yeah, he'd love to play in Montreal. Does not necessarily mean that's where he ends up. Blake Wheeler, 72 games, 18 goals, 39 assists, 57 points. Wheeler has been the team captain for a while. Of course, lost that last offseason. And this past year for Wheeler has been kind of just there producing points at a good rate. But again, it feels like he's done in Winnipeg. And Hellebuck, 37, 25, and 2 with a .920 save percentage. One of the best goaltenders in the NHL. Very likely on the move as he doesn't want to extend his time. So it feels like there's a similar situation where guys who are up in 2024 may want to move on. The reasoning may very well be different. Again, split locker room here, and it may just be the Flames kind of spinning their wheels. Maybe a split locker room here as well, right? Now, if you're looking for upcoming and you're looking for players, and I went with guys who maybe have played a game or two, but nobody's played a significant amount of time. So an honorable mention for Calgary, I have to mention Pelche. Pelche played, I think, 24 games this year, so he should be a regular next year. Matthew Coronado, the plan is to make him a regular as well. Connor Zary, I think, has earned himself a call-up. And Dustin Wolf is one of those fascinating ones, too. So for Calgary, they would buy themselves a little bit of cap space if they moved Vladar and ended up making Wolf the backup. There's some, of course, risk to that because Wolf would be a rookie, but we've seen teams do it before. We saw Calgary do it when they brought him in, when they brought in Vladar. So maybe they move out Vladar and maybe Wolf becomes the guy. I would think that if Vladar's on the market, teams would be looking to pick him up, maybe including Winnipeg, because they need a backup goaltender. So there's that, right? Now, on the Winnipeg side, you've got Chaz Lucius. You've got Brad Lambert. Lambert, of course, is very much he's either going to be a fantastic player in the NHL, and we're going to look back and say, wow, he ended up overcoming a lot of things to get here, in that he didn't have a great draft year. He's had his stops and starts in juniors and just in general, but if he can hit those marks that Winnipeg thinks he can, he could be a huge star for them, or at the very least a good start. But he may end up flaming out as well. And Ville Heinola, who's been on the verge of making the Winnipeg Jets for a long time, is this the year they finally give him that real chance? And Rutger McGroarty, who was kind of a bit of a surprise when he was drafted where he was by Winnipeg, and how long it's going to take for him to come into the lineup, what kind of role he ends up playing, has yet to be determined. Now, a need to be re-signed. Sandberg is a restricted free agent for the Winnipeg Jets. I think it's important that they make sure that he's signed to a reasonable cap hit. I would think a 2 or 3 year bridge deal probably for him. As mentioned just moments ago, they also need to play a backup goaltender. So going into the playoffs, it was clear they didn't have a lot of faith in Riddick. And so adding a guy like, for instance, Vladar to Calgary would make a lot of sense. Now, on the Calgary side, I think they need to re-sign Michael Stone. And if they don't, they need somebody with that booming shot on the point that Stone gave him. And honestly, I don't think there's any reason that they shouldn't re-sign Stone. I know they don't have the cap space, but they're going to have to figure it out. And of course, then there's the Shillington return, which is important. And apparently that's on the way as well. So if you re-sign Stone, if Shillington comes back, then if you trade Hannafin, it's not as damaging as it otherwise would be if you're not getting a defenseman back in the trade. The one question mark for both Kevin Cheveldayoff as well as Craig Conroy is, do you want to take a step back? Winnipeg has said no. Calgary's indication seems to be no as well. But the more of these core players that you're looking at probably moving out, you are very likely going to look at some kind of a drop in the standings, at least out of the gate, because you have guys who are not familiar with each other. You're getting your chemistry together. Those first 10 to 15 games could be tough. But at any rate, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Which players do you think ends up leaving? Which of these two teams do you think ends up being the more likely of the two that ends up making the playoffs next year? And does one, the other, or both need some sort of a retool or rebuild? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.